This year, most of this year and a little bit of last year, I mean, it's been incredibly challenging, obviously, to, our industry, right? We've been impacted in a way that it's almost undescribable to people because,
Yeah.
For a lot of the world, life is relatively unchanged with the exception of, some, I was going to say minor inconveniences, but for some, it's a major inconvenience, like some people work from home.
Yeah.
If you're a restaurant worker and stuff like that, or involved in travel or tourism, you have been impacted to some degree, most definitely. But I don't know if people can really relate to what it's like to be in the music industry, because it was like one day, all of a sudden, you get the phone call. And it's not the phone call that you're laid off or you're fired or there's a shortage of work. It's the phone call is this industry, until further notice, and we don't know when this is done.
Yeah.
Like, it's just done. We can't even talk about it. We don't have a plan. We can't tell anybody anything. And now you've got, thousands or millions of people that are, directly involved in this industry, all like, taking a good hard look in the mirror and going, okay, so we weren't prepared for this. No one warned us. Now what do we do? And we're talking people with families and houses and plans.
Oh, yeah.
Who still have yet to return to work. So how is COVID affected, your career and your life?
It's so interesting because in a lot of ways, I've had so many conversations with, as you know, I record conversations with a lot of musicians and friends of mine for my own thing. But it's been really interesting hearing like every different take on this kind of thing. Because for me, it was, even though it's such a terrible situation overall, the case of why we had to shut down and what it's done to so many people, and you worry about that little coffee shop that you like or that restaurant that you like, these places, everything's having trouble staying afloat. For me, it actually ended up being very, very positive in terms of I am not a time off guy. I don't know how to say no. And I always am in a, even currently as things are sort of quietly firing up, I've got like, 3 things on my plate all at once. And you're like, that's just kind of how I operate. I've always been sort of a multitasker that way. And so when it was initially sort of forced upon us, it was sort of like, yeah, I could do 2 weeks on the couch. I thought 2 weeks, a month. My wife had been through SARS in Toronto. So she was kind of like, I think it's going to be, we're talking like 3 months, she was thinking. And I go, oh, you're crazy. It's like, this will be, it'll in it. If you would have told me that back then, I would have said, that we'd be still talking about this. I would have said, you're nuts. But it ended up being very positive for me in terms of like sort of a reboot in terms of, and then all of a sudden my friends are like, we just put out a record with some friends of mine from Ace Frehley's band that was completely done remotely, people sending tracks back and forth and just having fun and really with no intention of like touring. Well, clearly we can't tour on it anyway, but you just kind of like, I found myself writing more than ever because this guy wanted to do this and that guy wanted to do that. We were sending tracks back and forth. That said, I mean, as positive as one can make it, it's certainly, stunted everybody's style. And we're all kind of like, as you mentioned, whether you're in security, in driving trucks, driving bus, there's so many different positions within the world of an actual touring band that I could see the punk rock clubs bouncing back really fast. Like we're all going to go out and play, rock clubs or whatever. It's the bigger shows. It's, the Slash feature Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators band is essentially an arena act. In other parts of the world, we can do arenas no problem. That's not on the table. We might be able to do some stuff in the US coming up eventually. Then you get into that next level of Guns N' Roses, Kiss, Rolling Stones, and that kind of stuff. Those level of tours, trying to get that many people into a venue and what that means to make that work financially on all aspects is nearly impossible to think about. And the people who have been in real trouble, I mean, there's people who are in real trouble week 1 when this went down, or within the first few weeks were like, how am I going to make rent? How am I going to make any of this work? So I feel very fortunate that I've always had trouble saying no to things. So I've done a pretty good job of kind of keeping stuff kind of like afloat during all this. And now it's all behind the scenes. Like I'm about ready to head off to out of state to work on another record for a few weeks. Then I come back to California and work on another record. So there's a lot of that going on. There is quite a bit of creativity going on, so that by 2022, when things are happening, it's going to be a traffic jam of new music and bands going on the road, at least through the United States and hopefully Canada. Yeah. So in the meantime, it's just been, what can you do? I've tried. I'm a very optimistic cat. Like I talked to a friend recently who was very sort of like, I don't think things are ever going to go back to normal. I think things are completely irrevocably changed. And I'm like, I don't really think that. I really kind of feel more like, I think things will be okay. I think things are going to be wacky, and we're all going to look back on this particular chapter and go like, that was nuts. But I really do believe that there's a lot of cool stuff coming.
Like a bad plane ride.
Yeah. It's
you're
weird.
like, you get off after, you're shook up. Oh fuck, I don't want to fly again.
Yeah. And then a month later, you're on a plane. Yeah.
Right. It could be like a really bad relationship that you never want to repeat again, right? You're like, okay, we were not doing that again.
Yeah. Even in the best case scenario, you survived it. You didn't thrive in it.
Best case scenario. But, I think things will return in 2022. Yeah. I think people just need to be patient. I know it's really tough. Mm-hmm. And I know it's hard on the musicians in the music industry, but in order for us to return to any significant level of work, it needs to be complete, right? It can't be, well, you can play in Florida and you can play in Texas. Okay, well, you can't book tours that way. It's also not cost effective. So until we can return to the traditional form of organized touring sequentially and geographically, we're just going to have to hold tight.